on something else, which is actually a kind of development of the same piece, which has now become what the current working title is design intelligence, superpower that can turn design into the new MBA. So I'm trying to push and provoke a little bit here, and this is still a work in progress, so it's not a fully thought through argument. So I invite anybody to contradict and challenge me. If that be the case, I'll only benefit from that. And I'm going to do the really ultra boring thing for a design professor, which is to show slides with text and read from a paper. Okay, so if you want to have a nap, it's a good time to do so. Yes, perfect conditions. Okay, so I won't feel bad if I find you all dozing by the end of the.
I like to hear some snoring.
I could be snoring myself.
You don't fall asleep.
You know. Okay, so here goes. AI is now too big to fail. I mean, there's a concept that apparently it goes in business. A new trend comes on that some technologies, some trends are like on the borderline between success and failure, and sometimes even without actually establishing the grounds for success, they become so deeply invested that they are called too big to fail. So companies, countries, everybody's investing huge amounts in almost like a blind competitive panic in the hope that it will start paying back in a big way. And presumably it will. Now also we have come across AI agents which are performing tasks and doing things that originally were human tasks, so human work, customer service, data entry, problem solving, basic level problem solving, even some creative tasks, as we have found out. So my contention is that the discourse is generally presented as one around efficiency, that faster, more, accurate, etc. These are terms that are applied to AI taking on these kind of previously human tasks. But I am proposing it slightly differently, that rather than efficiency, it is about expertise. It's about human expertise. The question that AI is making us think about or ask is, what is it that remains uniquely human? What is it that AI cannot do, that only humans can do, right? So the systems are enabling decision-making, finance, even law, healthcare, all these fields are actually getting rapidly overtaken by AI and kind of replacing human work in many ways. So the automation that is happening along with this, the challenge is our value or our capacity to understand, address and navigate complexity. In other words, because it is taking care of certain basic level tasks, the human responsibility or scope is now being pushed upwards into more complex tasks or into dealing with more complex problems. And what I'm proposing is that it moves the decision-making space for human beings from more mechanistic or data-driven approaches to those that are more distinctly human, deal with human abilities like, and forgive me for using these slightly slippery words, intuition, creativity, or judgment. Now, we know these are all important words. We know these are often used in decision-making at the highest levels, if you like, of human organizations. And yet they remain undefined. They remain quite arbitrary and vague in some ways. And in design, of course, we are seeing this even more so, because traditional design work, as we have seen, layouts, typography, color selections, the grids or whatever patterns, etc. They depended on technical skill and a kind of human intuitive sense of aesthetics. But AI can analyze millions of designs and generate outputs, not outcomes, that surprise even its creators sometimes. So AI is now throwing up surprises. It's no longer just doing what we expect it to do, it is surpassing itself and actually throwing up what we might call or consider creative outcomes or outputs. There's some research done by El Gamal and fellow authors, which demonstrates that AI systems can produce unexpected yet compelling artistic choices that actually, by human judgment, push the boundaries of conventional art and design. So already AI is reaching that space where it is actually throwing up stuff that is surprising us and impressing us on our own terms. So the question about what remains uniquely human, it lies in the spaces where we go beyond technical execution and go into emotional, cultural, and experiential resonance. So while AI will handle the mechanical part or the algorithmic part, human designers will be called to engage with higher level challenges that require judgment, empathy, vision. So what I'm proposing is something called design intelligence, as a kind of, which is a term, a very general term which I'm applying for all the kind of knowledge and capabilities that artists and designers bring to bear in their work, in their performance. I'm also relating it with the ability that artists like musicians or dancers have, which is a kind of embodied skill, embodied ability, or athletes and sports people have, which is a kind of very high level of bodily perfection and performance on tap, which does not really require cognition. And this is some kind of muscle memory, some kind of training, some kind of intense practice and self-awareness that has led them to that level of excellence. So, what is this design intelligence? And there is actually a term by this same coinage, which was coined by the great Nigel Cross, for those of you who know. He's a design academic of many years standing from Britain. In the 1980s was it? He actually used this term design intelligence in some similar context, though at that time the discussion had nothing to do with AI and so on. So I'm saying that let's say the design intelligence, or DI, is the distinct form of knowing which emerges when conventional, rational approaches reach their limits. In other words, where the logical, data-driven, mechanistic problem-solving or decision-making ends, that's where design intelligence starts. So it's not merely creativity, not merely analytical intelligence, not merely this or that or the other, but a synthesis of all of these. And this design intelligence thrives where all these problem-solving and other models really stop and the next level comes into play. So to that we need to ask the question of what makes what we call great design. What makes great design great? That's a good question to ask. So there, look at these examples of a master weaver or an artisan, even a design student for that matter, or a musician or a gymnast, right? The master artisan who can actually come up with complex, really sophisticated designs without being able to explain, without being able to verbalize exactly what they're doing, why they're doing this. The design student, and this happened to me and I'm sure a lot of you in your own educational space, is where the design student keeps trying, and the educator keeps asking them to try more, push a little harder, explore a little further, and then suddenly some kind of coin drops or penny drops, and then you suddenly start seeing the student flower, and they've suddenly got something which they've plucked out from the air, just with this kind of rigor and dedication. Or a musician who improvises, right? I mean, he or she may be a master of their singing or of their instruments, whatever it is, and they are in the middle of a kind of musical performance, dishing out a raga or something, and they are able to improvise and adapt without thinking. Because it's all sitting inside them all the time. They just have to look inside and respond to the moment in some way. Sorry about that. Yeah. And the gymnast. I mean, gymnast is somebody who again, pushes to that level of perfection and practice that because when they're performing at a very, very high level, like Olympics or whatever it is, there's no time to think in the middle of a performance. You're just doing in that flow of the movie. And that's why there are many scholars and researchers who have written about this area of knowing. There is tacit knowledge by Polanyi, there is flow, which Aisha also referred to as by Csikszentmihalyi. So there are these terms which people have already talked about. And I think if we club them all together and bring them all together, we actually get the outlines or contours of this new definition of intelligence or category of intelligence that I'm talking about. So what are the attributes or features of this intelligence? I mean, it's just a proposal, so there's nothing cast in stone about here. But there is intuitive pattern recognition, which is the ability to recognize complex patterns that defy simple explanations. This is similar to what many of us refer to as gut feeling. That, I have got a gut feeling on this, right, or hunch, which requires a seasoned practitioner, or which is what happens to seasoned practitioners when they instantly know what is happening in the given context. We talked about Mahendra Bhai Patel yesterday. He is one of those kind of people that I've always thought of as, he has this ability to spot a micrometer or millimeter level error from 20 feet away. And as students, we were always in awe of that what an eye this guy has. He can spot the slightest error from such a distance. So these are all very, very kind of sharply defined or evolved pattern recognition abilities. And again, there are people who have written about this, that it's a kind of defined as intuitive judgment, where data alone cannot capture the full picture. The second is emotional and cultural sensitivity, because as designers, as creative people, we are working in a social and cultural space and political as well. So there's an innate understanding of how our decisions, our consequences will affect or impact people, will affect or impact whether users or audiences or otherwise. So design is not just about usability, but also about giving or generating experiences that feel right. Another slippery term. What does this feel right? What does it actually mean? We all know it means something. We all know it is important. We all know it is critical to our outcomes. But we don't have a roadmap. We don't have a formula. We don't have a framework to generate this feel right. And I'm suggesting that that is really the next level of design intelligence that we have to tackle. Cross-domain connectivity. So one of the remarkable aspects of the so-called design intelligence is the capacity to make connections or join dots between seemingly unrelated domains. This ability to think metaphorically or symbolically or in a kinesthetic manner, where we're able to transfer or translate from one discourse to another in a very, very fluid way, is again a unique intelligence capability that I'm proposing to be included in this design intelligence. And lastly, the final one is resilience and adaptability, which is where we are able to respond to things on the fly. So it is being able to recognize change as it is happening, process or analyze it in some way, and respond to it in terms of outcomes of strategies. So this adaptive intelligence is also one of the sub-elements of this design intelligence idea. So my contention here is that this kind of design intelligence is not only great for design, obviously we talked about it as an attribute of great design, but it is also important in our world. So it is now going beyond design. This intelligence can actually make an important contribution or have an impact in larger domains apart from design itself. This is actually, I'm proposing that it becomes a decision-making process for, and that's why the proposal to replace the MBA, which is the General Administration or Leadership or Managerial Capability Development Program, and actually build it, recraft it around this as the core discipline or skill set. Interestingly, this design intelligence or whatever I'm referring to is also connected with ancient or traditional pedagogies. Right? We all know that traditional craft people, they train in a kind of apprentice, master apprentice way. The children are brought up and they learn the craft or the skill in the context of their own home. We know that the so-called Guru Shishya Parampara also operates in that kind of holistic, integrated learning environment where things are not necessarily separated. So all of these, they all go beyond just textual or verbal knowledge. They go into some kind of embodied knowledge and capability. And there's a lot of practice and there's a lot of repetition involved as well in that. So there's a different pedagogy here. It is not really the classic lecture-based pedagogy that we have now standardized in most of our higher education contexts. There is a much more immersive, in-depth, and holistic pedagogy that maybe resonates with Sri Aurobindo's integral yoga ideology as well. And he's, of course, one of the greatest thinkers on education that we have. Again, I'll cite Michael Polanyi, who talked about tacit knowledge, and in one of his classic quotes is, "We know more than we can tell." So he clearly points out to the difference of what we know or what we can know versus how much we can talk about it. So there's a limitation of words, there's a limitation of language, which prevents us from actually being able to transmit knowledge or transfer knowledge or even imbibe knowledge. And then these are the knowledges that I'm interested in getting into, the knowledge of patterns, possibilities, and so on. And I think it's also all the more important now that given the so-called VUCA environment, I'm sure all of you know this term by now. In fact, some people have renamed it to BANI, BANI, but let's stick to VUCA for now. These are all the conditions in which this design intelligence thrives. It actually performs very well when there is volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. these are exactly the conditions in which it thrives. So it's a kind of natural fit here that in VUCA times, the kind of leadership attributes that are required, not just in design, but at a general level, actually are very similar to what design intelligence affords us. So what are those qualities or attributes? Here are some that I've been able to list down. And again, I have to be thankful to AI in part for suggesting some of these. Sense making and navigation. So traditional fields, whether they are geopolitics, climate science, governance, economics, etc., they rely on data and linear models, linear in a kind of qualified sense, that falter amid complexity. So wicked problems, to answer Kirti's question, is a kind of nature of complex problems where everything is unknown pretty much. And you are it's even hard to define what the problem itself is, because you yourself are part of the problem. To go back to Einstein's quote on the conditions that created the problem. So we are part of creating the problem, and we are still trying to find the problem. That's the wicked problem. By embracing methods such as scenario design, journey mapping, pattern recognition, design leaders or design thinkers can envision multiple futures and identify weak signals of change, navigating uncertainty with agility. So that's sense-making and navigation. The second one is giving a strategic edge to intuition. We all use the word intuition, we all actually rely on intuition a lot, but we don't dignify it, we don't give it the respect that it actually deserves and the honor that it deserves. Because we treat it as something that is arbitrary and irrational, and it has to be constantly backed up by data and evidence all the time. So I'm suggesting that maybe we look at intuition as a thing, not as an imaginary hallucination of things, but as a real thing, and then investigate exactly what it is all about. I think there is a lot there, and if we go deeper, I'm sure we'll be able to find a lot of exciting possibilities there. So in complex environments, where intuition becomes a strategic asset, and we know that in many cases, designers excel in abstractive reasoning and creative synthesis, which we all know, abilities that allow them to navigate non-linear challenges. By formally recognizing these as core leadership competencies, we elevate intuitive judgment from a soft skill to a critical component of decision making. Bridging silos and building transdisciplinary fluency. So today's crises, that's why they're called polycrises, are not confined to single domains or disciplines. They are cognitive, relational, systemic, call it what you want. So therefore, designers or design thinkers or design leaders with their ability to connect dots across diverse fields, be it law or technology or social systems or governance, are uniquely capable of revealing hidden dependencies and crafting innovative integrated solutions or outcomes. The bridging of silos is essential for addressing the multifaceted challenges of our time. Designing new infrastructures, and this is something I've been thinking about a lot of late. The big challenges that we face, climate change or economic inequality, etc., they demand rethinking not only the products or aspects of it, but entire system at a systemic level. Design can help create. So we are actually operating not at the superficial product service level, but we're going deeper into the infrastructures, the underlying sort of sets of conditions that actually enable that shape things as they emerge or not. And we talked about policies. When the Undersecretary came and presented the policy, he's actually responding to an infrastructural opportunity here. And therefore, the question I had also was earlier is that designers will have to now start thinking of themselves not as designers alone, but as potentially policy makers, or as managers, or leaders, or chief executives, and really think beyond their own box. And lastly, the leadership mindset, right? So imagine a future where global decision making is not dominated only by or exclusively by technocrats, MBAs, or politicians, but by people who are trained in this design mind, whatever we call it. Right? These leaders, steeped in design intelligence, all those attributes we talked about earlier, they combine human-centered insight, systemic vision, radical creativity to shape policy and negotiate conflicts. I think that becomes the larger playing ground. Pradeep talked about that we have to enlarge the scope. We have to go outside of the traditional application area of design. And I think I'm echoing that also through this argument. So these are all mindsets that we need to cultivate, that is both intuitive and rigorously analytical, which is capable of steering us through uncertainty. So what could be the directions or implications for education? Because education, if we change the parameters of what design is all about, so must design education also follow or enable in some way. So design education can do the following things, or just to begin with. So emphasize the kind of immersive, repetitive, intense riyas, a very, very strong focus on very, very mindful practice. Much like classical musicians or dancers who internalize their art through relentless practice, design students should engage in mindful repetition. This not only reinforces technical skills, but also allows them to develop an intuitive grasp of the principles and essences over time. So it's really a way to really take it into your body, not just leave it in your mind, with all these abilities that you're training for. Balance explicit instruction and implicit learning, so create a holistic model of learning. Traditional curricula focus on understanding of theories and principles. However, as we see in this field, much of what makes design powerful is tacit and unarticulated. So educators should use design principles or theories mostly as scaffolds or as just structures to support the learning, but gives students a lot more freedom, which we learn is part of what the pedagogy here at the CDS has been following. So I'm keen to learn more about that. But eventually, the students should become confident and very, very capable of trusting their own gut instincts. That should be the kind of outcome that we're looking at through the education system that we initiate. Flexible, personalized learning, that's obviously an answer. I mean, I don't need to elaborate on that. And science and technology, where does science and technology come in? Because my contention is that we are living in a world that is still running on industrial kind of revolution principles and patterns, which are large-scale industry, large-scale science and technology dominated, and super rational, super evidence-based and measurement-based management. I think the time has come to move beyond that, and I think AI is the right kick in the butt that we actually needed to help us push us out of that. So we can look at, and so it's not to say that we abandon technology at all. We absolutely must not do that, but we must use it for what it is good for us and open us to the possibility of doing what we can do ourselves. So this is the summation. As AI redefines work and design by taking over routine tasks, we are presented with a transformative opportunity to evolve a leadership skill set that is anchored in the mystical yet imaginative aspects of design. This is the ability to make sense of, lead, and navigate through VUCA, chaos and complexity. So this intelligence, design intelligence, if you like, draws on ancient pedagogies of immersive practice and apprenticeship, but also harnesses modern tools to reveal and define our intuitive capabilities. By reimagining design education so that it focuses on holistic complexity and intuitive practice, we can cultivate design leaders, doers who excel in sense-making, cross-domain connectivity, and adaptive resilience. I really hope that if we all get excited by this possibility and try our own approaches to push the boundaries or the envelopes of the human aspect, the non-algorithmic, the non-mechanistic aspect of creativity and design in our training, I think we are in for something very big, because I think we might have a real, this is a little ambitious, a real solution to what the world needs today. Because in a way, the traditional mindset, the old mindset of decision making and policy and information is what is actually constraining us and holding us back from achieving our fullest potential as a species.